Homeland, Chapter 1, The Stranger Out of the Sea. I still remember the day when she came to our beach in the summer before I turned 9. We had gone inland for the day, to the moorland areas of Croggery and Mari, to cut peat. Father, having skimmed off the grassy surface of our peat bank with his flouter spade, was so busily engrossed in the steady rhythm of digging into the soft brown soil, then straightening to gently deliver a slice of darkly gleaming earth off his peat iron onto the grass, that his shirt was already damp when I brought him his flask of water sometime between morning porridge and our lunch in the open. While old Mari kept busy too, laying out the freshly cut peats further away from the bank as soon as the ground near it started being crowded with handy rectangular pieces, I was mostly running around, looking, touching things, playing. Before Mari tackled the new peats, she had already been stacking last time's, the ones we had cut in the previous weeks, now dried in the wind and sunshine, into neat little tents framing the further side of the bank like miniature houses. 4 slabs for walls, and the 5th made the roof. I had helped with that, since it was fun to construct little buildings. Yet when the heavy fresh peats had to be laid out, after a few half-hearted attempts at helping, I had left the bulk of it to Mari. I had felt moderately guilty for letting her do most of the women's work alone now, although I would one day be a woman too. Still, she had told me repeatedly she would not mind, and that I should go and enjoy the scenery, which I did. I climbed a bit higher up Croggery Moor and sat down on a large, flat, grey rock overlooking the sea. I was not completely sure, but pretty certain that this was the very stone we used to sit on when I was younger, and Papa's soft voice directed my eyes over the heather, over Loch Ngoosh, over Loch Neagh, across Armor to the headland of Cled, roaming over our fields, and finally finding their rest on the yellow-white speck of our cottage, whose whitewashed walls, red-painted door, and thatched roof beside the small sandy beach made me clap my hands in delight each time and look at my father's face with sheer joy. "Aye, my love," he would say, "this is our home." And his arms would come round my shoulders, drawing me a bit closer to his side than before, and he would place a light kiss on my hair, making me feel even safer than I already had, leaning into his embrace. Whenever Mari was with us on the hill and there was washing on the line in our garden, we took it even further. She and I tried to discern and describe each article of clothing, and the one who had scored the highest number would be the winner, which was usually I. "She's got eagle's eyes, that lass, she has," Mari would comment. Papa would smile his lovely, incomparable smile and say something like, "She's got a seer's eyes, this one." And in fact, reconsidering those moments now, I could not say whether those pieces of washing were really in our plain sight from so far away, or whether we simply tried to remember what we had hung up in the morning, or whether indeed I saw them somehow before my inner eye the same way I later saw things more complex and more relevant than pieces of fabric on clothes pegs. We had not played any of these endearing games in a long time, so I did the looking part of them for myself now. It was not the same, though. I turned my gaze southwards to find Croggery's neighbour, the flatter, more rounded hill named after Mari, Mari's own mountain. For that's how I liked to think of it, even though it had been explained to me that it had been there before the old housekeeper had been born, and that it was spelt differently, although it was most likely the same name, and besides was not high enough to be classified as a mountain. Still, I am convinced to this day that both the rocky outcrop and the woman who was my nurse, my teacher, and our housewife bore one and the same name, Mary, simply spelled in two different ways. Soon I stood up, and after a glimpse southeast over the curving, heathery slopes hugging the countless inland lochs, and another quick survey of the sky in search of a golden eagle, I wandered off towards the shores of Loch Uist, to trail my hands in the cold water, gently rippling towards the land. Squatting on a large roundish rock protruding into the lake, I cast a quick glance back over my shoulder to see if any of the adults was noticing. If they were, none of them chided me. I had been told to be careful at the water's edge, not to get too close because the banks might be marshy and the sedge might hide that from my eyes till it was too late. Yet I felt a desire to clean my hands of the sticky remains of wet earth, and I wanted to watch the water. So I had taken care to spot stones that gave me a foothold to balance on till I had reached the water's edge. When I was 6 years old, it had been a lot of fun to muck around in the muddy peat and get besmeared with it, especially when we were working together with other families and other children were running around, so you could do all kinds of harmless mischief, from throwing peat at each other to creative contests of peat art, as I would now call it, drawing figures with a brown mass on our own or each other's bare arms and hands, a game of guessing what was depicted. But that day we had gone out alone, and besides, I was no longer 6. I threw a few flat stones across the water's surface, though I still had not got the hang of how it was done properly, the way the boys in Dramiscary did it, so the stones skipped 5 or 6 times at least before they sank. Then I stopped, seeing the water lilies blossom to my left, their shining white set off against the lake like stars in a night sky. There were little ripples on the loch, and its colour in this weather reminded me of my father's eyes, a dark, greyish blue, full of secrets, but also full of light and laughter. I found 2 swans on the water that day, appearing of a sudden from behind Dún Uist and now drifting lazily in the dark blue close to the crannog. I loved swans already back then, their purity, beauty, and royal appearance inspiring me to make up all kinds of noble and sad stories about them. It was not the well-known legend of the children of Lear that got me started on this, because I remember I used to dream of a white swan even before I had heard that tale told at a ceilidh around the fireside one winter. All of my stories somehow involved suffering, sacrifice, and love. Looking back, it strikes me as odd that at the age of 8 I should make a swan an orphan from the north, flying lonely over the moors in search of a home, until it arrived at Dún Uist on Uist to search for the treasure reputedly hidden on the island, only to find its true treasure in the eternal companionship of another swan, having waited countless years for the fulfillment of a promise, swimming around lonely on this very loch until the north wind brought along its destined mate. It was, in fact, no more to be marvelled at than the crush on a white-haired boy in Solace I developed only a year later and my insistence on marrying him. Perhaps this romantic streak at such an early age was connected to the losses I had suffered and the trauma I had experienced at the age of 5. "Ailey," I heard Mari's voice carry over the moss now clearly. "Aren't you getting hungry?" A quick look at the sun showed me that it was well past noon. I snuggled the bog cotton I had plucked during my swantail against my cheek once more, soft like a down feather. Then I got up in one smooth motion. I balanced quickly, maybe a bit carelessly, over the stones and fell into a light trot as soon as I had reached less boggy ground. I knew they would have used some of the drier slabs of peat to make a decent fire. If I squinted my eyes, I even saw its smoke rising a bit further up in the heather where they had been working, and I knew there were potatoes waiting to be roasted, because I had carried them up the hill myself in my small creel together with the salted fish, while Mari's larger one had contained blankets and bottles of water, Dad carrying his tools over his shoulder. Our descent was easy. This time we did not bring any of the dried peat down with us. We still had enough stocked beside our cottage to keep us going for the week at least, I had heard Mari say this morning, and anyway we had neither brought a peat barrow nor the pony and cart, and Papa would hear nothing of Mari carrying the heavy slabs in her creel, although she had offered. So I bounced down the slope on Father's hand, merrily chatting on about the legendary golden treasure of Croggery Moor, then spinning him my new tale about the white swans of Dùthaich, while the old woman fell in line behind us, humming one of her many well-known tunes. By the time we had reached the cottage, I was tired from the day out, yet not so tired that I did not run to the beach immediately after I had got rid of my creel. The tide had been in, and was slowly receding once more, reason enough for me to skip over the scree and rush to the water's edge, combing the wetted sand with my eyes. "Always searching for treasures, that one," I heard Mari at my back, and Dad's calm voice answer. "She's been looking for a large, unbroken shell for weeks now. I think it has to do with the fact that your skimming shell got trodden on." I could almost sense him wink at her, though I did not see him, and I smiled. I did not mind him telling her my secrets, at least not this one. Balancing over a few larger rocks, holding on to them with my hands so I would not step into one of the rock pools, I made my way to the westernmost part of the beach, where the waves usually lapped the shore with more force than in the sheltered center of the bay. Some pinkish-white boulders were sticking out of the sand, and beside them I could make out a white, star-shaped scallop surrounded by what looked to be yellow seaweed. Or was it a starfish? I was so quick to reach it and bent down to pick it up that I had almost touched it before I realized with a shock that it was a sprawled hand. The seaweed were in fact blonde strands of wet, tangled hair, almost completely covering a face beneath. Incredulously, my eyes traveled further down to identify the alleged pink-white boulders as a naked body half buried in the sand. "Daddy! Daddy!" It came out as a shrill shriek. "Daddy, come here! There's a dead girl on the beach!" I had no idea where he was, and should have run in search of him, but somehow I was rooted to the spot, unable to even move a finger. Tears sprang to my eyes, and the image blurred in front of me, the pale skin and yellow hair metamorphosing into grey and checkered folds of clothing, dark tangles around a white face, eyes staring at me without seeing. Thrown off board, and I heard her skull crack as it hit a rock on the pebbly shore, and it was small comfort that she was already dead before that. I heard her skull crack, and one of the men was swearing. Voices were yelling in my head, panic was rising within me, a stench in my nostrils, acid rising in my throat, my breathing close to suffocating. The sea was roaring, my arms helplessly pawed the air, and I slumped to the ground like a piece of wet peat.
rain does blow, or the stormy north sends driving forth the blinding sleet and snow, while tumbling down the burn comes down and roars frae bank to brae, and bird and beast in covered rest and pass the heartless day, and bird and beast in covered rest and pass the heartless day. Hey, yeah, hey, yeah, hey. Others fear to me more dear than all the pride of May. The tempest howl, it soothes my soul, my griefs it seems to join. The leafless trees my fancy please, their fate resembles mine. The leafless trees my fancy please, their fate resembles mine. Because they are thy will, then all I want, oh, do thou grant this one request of mine. Since to enjoy thou dost deny, assist me to resign. Since to enjoy thou dost deny, assist me to resign.
Ailey, a hand gently stroked my hair, and I was held close against some woolen fabric. Ailey, it is over. It's all right. You're safe. The fabric, worn and frayed at the edges, smelled of Mari. It is over. You are safe. It is over, her gentle, lilting voice kept repeating. Cautiously, I opened one eye and peered through still lowered lashes. I saw the familiar tartan of Mari's wrap, the colourful, small checkered red, green, blue and white of Clanranald, and a bit of her brown skirt showing just beside my cheek. I exhaled deeply, opened both eyes wide, and saw father bending over the corpse on the sand, apparently shifting its position. "Mari?" I asked a bit hoarsely, my voice still shaky. "What's Daddy doing with the dead body?" "She's alive, sweetheart. No reason to worry," said the old woman, softly cupping her palm against my cheek. I squinted against the glimmer of sunlight pulsating on the water directly behind them, trying to make sense of what I saw. Is he Is he kissing her, Mari? He's giving her first aid, love. She was close to drowning. Her breathing needs to be reanimated. I was thinking about that on the way back to our cottage, when father, having lifted her gently into his arms as if she weighed no more than one of our lambs, was carrying the strange girl over our threshold, Mari holding the door open for him, and set her down on the nearest bed, which happened to be his, and told me to prepare warm water. I was thinking about it still, when I stoked up the fire and put the kettle on it and filled the bathtub, what it would feel like to stop breathing and be reanimated by a kiss. When Mari had bathed her and clothed her in fresh linen and laid her in her own bed, I saw the girl's eyes were open by now, and she was looking around her with guarded curiosity, only lightly mingled with apprehension. Both Mari and Dad had gone outside, to look after the animals, I presumed. So when the stranger moved and shifted under the covers and sat up, running pale fingers through her pale hair, the same fingers that I had mistaken for a shell, I tiptoed up to the bed and looked at her in what I hoped would be calming reassurance no more than blatant curiosity. And since my father had told me that people across the water did not understand the Gaelic, and that was the reason why I was raised bilingual, I scratched together my English for a timid, "What is your name?" For after all, the girl, though having come directly out of the water for now, most likely before that had come from somewhere across the water. Remembering my manners, I quickly added, "I'm Eirien." That means radiant one, or shining light, I could not help translating, smiling a little to myself in remembrance of how my father called me his sunshine, although the word for hind, Eilid, was almost the same, so I was not entirely sure about my name's ultimate meaning. The look she gave me was so blank that I concluded she might not have come from so far over the water to speak Burla, perhaps only from the Isle of Orsay, just across the Sound, though Mari had said that was unpopulated. But you never knew, so I tried it again in her own language. "Ismishe Eirien, Giantanima Ost." She stared at me for another few seconds, then silently shook her head. I furrowed my brows for a moment, coming up with a fresh idea. I pointed at myself, said softly Eirien, then pointed at her and raised my eyebrows in anticipation. Again there was a slight hesitation, but eventually she opened her mouth and said something so low and hoarsely that I did not understand. She cleared her throat and tried again. "Muriel." I stared at her for a moment. The name was so fitting. "That means Star of the Sea," I whispered, awestruck. She held my gaze for a moment, then looked away and said something unintelligible, a string of melodic words I had never heard before. I was not sure whether I had imagined a streak of pain crossing her features for a second, like a distant memory, but I was distracted by footsteps outside and the door hinges creaking. "Father!" He was at our side in a few large strides. "Aye, my dove?" "She doesn't speak our language. Shall I teach her to talk in Gaelic then, or in English?" My father smiled a broad smile at me. "Ye'd better teach her both, don't ye, if she's going to be your sister."
Silver streams, newborn leaves, dew isn't frozen anymore. Jewels of light from head to shore. Coldness leaving soon. Seasons are fighting. Feel the loving God embrace me in that rising warmth. night, death and life. We all know the day will come when all the work is done. Our creation